On June 3, 1967, Frank Cius was 20 years old, sitting behind a machine gun in the door of a Marine helicopter flying over Laos. The mission had already gone wrong. 3 choppers lost. What started as an extraction turned into a rescue. The helicopter spun out of control, rotated in the air, went down. Frank Cius thought they were crashing into jungle. He was wrong. They crashed into a Viet Cong village. What happened over the next 2,100 days is one of the most extraordinary survival stories of the entire Vietnam War. Frank grew up in Buffalo, New York. Before the war, he worked as a bartender at his family's tavern on Genesee Street. He enlisted in the Marine Corps and was assigned to the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing. Most of the men in his squadron were from the same area of Buffalo. They went to Vietnam together. Cius served as a crew chief and door gunner aboard CH-46A Sea Knight helicopters. In 1967 Vietnam, door gunners flew into some of the most dangerous airspace in the war. Their job was to protect the aircraft and everything around it with a machine gun from a door at low altitude in enemy territory. On June 3, 1967, Cius and his crew were tasked with extracting Special Forces soldiers from a mission in Laos that officially the United States wasn't supposed to be operating in at all. The extraction went wrong almost immediately. On the return leg, they lost 3 helicopters. The mission shifted from extraction to rescue. Then Cius's aircraft took the hit that ended everything. The aircraft spun, hover rotated, and came down hard. The pilot and co-pilot were wounded. The door gunner on the other side of the aircraft was dead. They had not crashed into jungle. They had crashed directly into a Viet Cong encampment. What followed in those first minutes was chaos in both directions. He caught a round in the left shoulder. Somehow, in that chaos, Frank Cius got out. Wounded, on foot, in the jungle, in Laos, in the middle of enemy territory, he ran. For a day and a half, Frank Cius evaded capture in the Laotian jungle. No support, no radio contact, no way to call for extraction. He was 20 years old. The US military's evasion and survival training gives a soldier a framework for this situation. Move at night, stay off trails, find water, keep moving. What the training cannot prepare you for is the reality of being alone, wounded, and hunted in a jungle you don't know by an enemy that does. On June 5, 1967, 2 days after the crash, his luck ran out. Viet Cong troops found him. Frank Cius was taken prisoner. He was the only Marine known to have been captured in Laos during the entire war. The journey north to Hanoi was its own ordeal. Cius and a small group of American prisoners were loaded onto trucks and driven through North Vietnamese villages. At each stop, they were paraded through the streets. They were throwing rocks, screaming at us, spitting at us, he recalled. During one of those stops, the sergeant, who had been team leader, a man Cius had watched deteriorate through interrogation, collapsed at the back of a village. Cius tried to hold him up. The man went into a seizure. He died in Cius's arms. One night later, they arrived in Hanoi. Frank Cius, 20 years old, a bartender's son from Buffalo, New York, was now a prisoner in the most notorious prison camp of the Vietnam War. The Americans called it the Hanoi Hilton. The actual name was Hoa Lo Prison, a French colonial facility repurposed by the North Vietnamese to hold American prisoners of war. For 3 months after his arrival, Frank Cius was interrogated. "I was a perfect liar," he said later. "I camouflaged everything I said. Their questioning was based on threats. They threatened torture." He believed they eventually saw through him. As punishment, or perhaps as a statement, they put him in solitary confinement. He would spend 3 of his 5.5 years there alone. His cell was 6 feet by 7 feet. 2 cement slabs served as his bed. He was fed twice a day, pumpkin soup, seaweed, bread. Through the walls of that cell, he could hear something that became the anchor of his survival. American warplanes, B-52s, and tactical aircraft bombing North Vietnam. The sound of his own country still fighting. I would listen to the American warplanes bombing North Vietnam and use that as motivation, he said. He had nothing else. No books, no contact with other prisoners for years at a stretch. Just a concrete room, 2 cement slabs, and the distant sound of engines overhead. 2,100 days. That's how long Frank Cius was a prisoner of war. 5 years and 9 months. From June 1967 to March 1973. To put that in context, a soldier who served a standard 1-year tour in Vietnam and came home had 365 days in country. Frank Cius had 2,100 days in a 6-by-7-foot cell. The men who survived the Hanoi Hilton long-term generally described the same thing when asked how they did it. Not physical toughness, not training, mental structure, finding something, anything, to organize the mind around when the body had nothing left to do. On March 5, 1973, Frank Cius walked out of the Hanoi Hilton as part of Operation Homecoming, the repatriation of American POWs following the Paris Peace Accords. He had gone in as a 20-year-old bartender's son from Buffalo. He came out at 26, a staff sergeant, Bronze Star recipient, and one of the longest-held Marine prisoners of the entire war. He medically retired from the Marine Corps in 1978. He doesn't carry bitterness for his captors. That's the part of his story that surprises people most. 5.5 years of imprisonment, solitary confinement, interrogation, torture threats, and he came home without hatred. I was very thankful that my prayers were answered, that I made it and was going home to America, he said. That's the whole of it. Frank E. Cius Jr. is not in any history textbook. His name is not on a monument. Most people who've spent years watching Vietnam War documentaries have never heard of him. He was a 20-year-old kid from Buffalo who did his job, survived the unsurvivable, and came home. If that story deserves to be told, and it does, subscribe. There are hundreds more like it.
Hello. We here at Battle Docs would like to extend our thanks to the people who watch our videos. I think it's important that we remember these men and women who sacrificed so much for our country. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. We'll see you on the next video.